What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a custom cooling system for our 2.9 liter Whipple Supercharger. Alright guys, so the issue we're having here with our Whipple is that we have got some leaking at the back of the supercharger here. Around back is where the cooling lines come in and out. So we've got a bunch of AN fittings and things like that just continue to leak. So I would call the current iteration I'm running here 2.0. So I had another setup previously, went through it, and now we're on version 2.0. We're still having some leaking issues, so I've got some ideas around how we can fix the leaking. So some things we're doing on other parts of the car that I think are going to work well for this setup. So before we jump in and really start working on the project of redesigning this custom system, let's look at what we have currently, and then we'll get into kind of building the new setup and see what that's going to look like. Alright, let's take a look at setup 2.0 and see what we're going to do to make 3.0 even better and what we're working with here before we get started. Okay, so you guys know we've got this Y-body C6 Corvette Whipple Supercharger on here, 2.9 liter. And we've got the hot rod setup, so basically came with the supercharger and the bracketry for the front, but didn't come with any cooling system. So none of the heat exchanger, none of the lines, anything like that. With this setup, you have to build it all yourself, okay? So I thought we did a pretty good job with it, right? So I kind of laid it out, knew what I wanted. We've got a real clean look here. You know, most of the stuff's hidden, lots of clean lines. Slide around here to this side and we can just see everything's pretty clean. So it looks good, but what we've got is at the back, these lines just leak the smallest amount, but it runs down on the bell housing. It's kind of dripping off the bottom of the bell housing. I'm worried about it getting on the clutch. The last thing we need is that slippery coolant getting down on the clutch at the back of the engine here. So we've got to get the leaks fixed. So let's take a look behind the motor here, kind of at what we've got going on. So if we slide in the back here, we can see the fittings here that we're having some issues with. And I've kind of got a lot of AN fittings going on here, which is probably part of the problem, right? So you've got all the vibrations and things at the back of the motor. Now let's get some more light back here. Okay, so starting at the one here on the right side, all right, this is where coolant comes into the heat exchanger, which sits below the supercharger. Over here on the left side, where we're coming out, we've got the fittings in the heat exchanger are 8 AN O-ring. And we go to a 90 degree, which steps up to a 10 AN, which steps up, it's got a union in here, which steps up to a 12 AN. Now, right here we switch over and we've got an inline filler neck right here, which allows us to fill the system up, which is a pretty neat setup. You look here, we can fill the system up there. So it's just like a radiator cap, which is inline. Obviously, you know, it's got the pressure relief here so it can bleed out. Then the rest of the system's 12 AN line, okay? So we just got to step up at the back where we come out of the supercharger. So we've got, you know, the 90 degree to a union and everything's stepping up. Then we get to the inline filler, and obviously all these are AN connections. Most of them are fine. This one switched to AN line. Then we're running Fragola's push lock hose line, which works really well, super clean, looks good. It comes out of here, comes through this line, and then it goes down on the frame rail here. Let's see if we can finagle the camera down in here. All right, here we go. We get down on the frame rail, and we can see it going in right there to a custom tank we built that sits on the frame rail. And basically that holds about 1.3 gallons of coolant. And it sits right down there on the frame rail. And it's really hard to see from this angle, especially since everything's black. But it sits right there, so it flows into that tank through an AN fitting. And then if we slide down under the car here, we can probably get a better view of that tank. So here it is sitting down on the frame rail. You can actually see some coolant dripping out there too. And then it comes out of the bottom of the tank and runs over here. And let's jump over there and take a look at that. Okay, so sliding into this corner. Ooh, that's dirty. All right. We basically come out of the tank, which is right here, and then come around to the cooling pump. So this is the Lingenfelter Veramax coolant pump. So you can see down here, we're utilizing the Gates heat shrink clamps, which go onto a hose barb, and then this end just heat shrinks over it. These things are phenomenal. So we don't have any leaking out of a single one of those heat shrink clamps, and we're using those everywhere. So we got the cooling pump here, tucked up behind the, right behind the bumper. And this is so dirty under here because we just drove in the rain the other day. All right, so then we come out of there and we come up top. So this line runs out of the pump and comes up here to the top of our heat exchanger. We're using another Gates heat shrink clamp here on the top of the heat exchanger. Gives it a really clean look, really clean. And then we got the heat exchanger up front. This is CNR Racing's ZL1 heat exchanger for the manual Camaro. And basically we went with this one because this is the largest one they made. This thing's absolutely huge. We can see it goes all the way down. I don't know if you can see my finger in here, but it goes all the way down to there, you know, all the way up here. So we've got a massive heat exchanger, 12 AN lines the whole way. Then we come across, and it actually comes out, it's really hard to see down there, comes out just below this molding here. It loops through the fender well to this bulkhead fitting here. So we've got 12 AN line bulkhead fitting right here where it comes out. So you got an AN fitting on that side and one on this side, where it comes out and then runs across the engine here, back to the back again, and then back into the engine. So that's the loop it makes, and that's the coolant flow path that it takes, coming out on the passenger side, looping through the large tank we have down on the frame rail, looping through the pump, to the heat exchanger, through the bulkhead fitting, and then back to the back. Now, the only fittings that are really leaking, well, we could see that one down on the tank leaking a little bit, but the main concern are the ones on the back of the engine. And I think we're just getting enough vibration from the motor and everything else that they're just leaking with that coolant being as slippery it is, that glycol. It's just super slick stuff. So we're just getting leaking, and we're gonna try to redo the system. So this comes to what we're gonna do to fix it. All right, so our game plan of attack here is to redo the cooling system. We're going to build a new tank, which is actually going to mount up on the firewall on the passenger side. We're going to redo the lines using more hose barb type fittings and heat shrink clamps, and kind of get rid of some of the AN connections we have specifically at the back of the motor, right? So let's clean those up. Let's go to hose barbs. Eliminate the possibility of anything leaking back there. We're going to take the tank off of the frame rail. So let's get rid of that and run it straight from the tank on the firewall, the new tank that's going to be there, run it down to the pump And then from there, we're going to run around and we're going to eliminate the AN connections at that bulkhead fitting on the driver's fender. And we're going to do a bulkhead fitting that's hose barb, same thing, heat shrink clamps, and then come back around to the motor. At the back of the motor, we'll have more hose barb fittings. So just kind of clean the whole thing up, do heat shrink clamps. Those things work really well. Haven't had any issues out of them. So that's going to be our 3.0 setup. And we can see the Summit Racing box in the corner here. So let's take a look at some of the goodies that we have that we're going to throw at this car and see if we can't get this thing cleaned up. All right, so I talked about building a tank on the firewall, and this is a cardboard mock-up of what we are going to build here. So this thing is what the tank is going to look like, and I'll show you in a minute where that's going to fit on the firewall. So to build this tank, we have got some aluminum here. So I just bought some sheet aluminum. I went over to metal supermarkets, and they've kind of have some scrap back there that you can just kind of look through. And this was just already cut back there, some leftover stuff. It's like 25 bucks, something like this, for this sheet of aluminum. It's 50-52. You can see it's basically 0.1 thick. So we're going to use this, and we'll cut it and we'll bend it in the brake to build the box, which will allow us to, mount this on the wall and have this be our new box. We want to do some custom touches on it too, right? So we don't want it to just look plain. It is going to be black. It's going to be understated. We want it to match the theme that we have going in there. I really don't want to put this on the firewall. I love how clean the firewall looks right now, but I think functionally this is going to be the best thing for the car going forward. Another thing we've got is my brother made some really cool aluminum plates here. You can see the LSX logo. We've got some different sizes here, small one and some big ones. We're actually going to take and put these on the tank, kind of have a little setup, weld that on down in the corner, and that way I think it'll look really good. So I asked him to make these, and he's like, sure, I can cut this out. So he's got a little plasma cutter that we can throw on there, and he made these, and they're going to look really good, I think. They're going to look sweet. So super stoked about that part of it. Then we've got the Christmas box over here. So we've got some new, I told you guys about this Fragola push lock hose. We got 10 foot of it here. I measured it out before I ordered this just to make sure 10 foot would get us what we need, and I think it will. It'll be just fine. So number 12, push lock hose, 10 feet of it right here. So this stuff should work good. This is actually a little different than the stuff I worked before. This is like a race light hose, or it's supposed to be a lighter weight hose than the one that I have on there now. So we'll see. It looks very similar aesthetically. From the outside, it's going to look the same, but it'll be neat to see how this looks. All right. Second thing, I guess we should start at the back of the motor. Okay. So at the back of the supercharger, coming out of basically the heat exchanger that sits under the supercharger, you've got an 8AN O-ring fitting, which is what the bottom of these are, to a 3/4 inch hose barb, which is 12AN. So this thing should seal up really well. So this is just going to sit straight on there coming out of the motor. We'll have the hose just slip right down over it and hopefully solve any leaking back there. From there, it is going to run straight from this fitting over to our tank. And our tank is going to have, let's see if I can get one of these out. We've got these hose barb fittings here that we can see. And let me get one of these out of this package. So basically, same thing here. We've got a weld-on hose barb fitting. So these will actually weld to the aluminum tank right here. So this one will kind of be sitting somewhere on this side up towards the top. So it'll flow out of this one to the top corner of this tank up here, where it will feed into the tank. Then we've got another one down in this box that we pull out. So we've got two of them, exactly the same. Another one will be feeding out of the tank, and this will flow down to the pump. So this will be down here in this corner somewhere. Probably have our little LSX logo there. Have another one up here, so it's going to feed in up here, come out down the corner, run down the side of the motor, similar to where that current line runs, so kind of that exact same path down the motor, and then down to the pump. Now, a couple other things we need to make this work is this cool piece from Vibrant Performance. So Vibrant, I used a lot of their stuff on the car. The whole fuel system's all Vibrant, AN fittings, and Vibrant line. But what we've got here is a weld-on radiator fill neck. So this thing's pretty cool, comes with the overflow line there. We can see the part number here, and it is a 1.65 inside diameter aluminum neck. I think they have a 1.25, 1.25 as well. But basically this is going to go over here on the side of the tank right here, and this will allow us to fill the tank up, fill the whole system up. It'll allow us to, have the overflow line to relieve pressure, be able to fill it up, and it'll be at the top of the system so we can leave a little bit of room in there for expansion. So the system should work pretty well. We're going to put some tabs on the tank to allow us to connect it to the firewall. This tank is going to be a lot smaller than the volume-wise than the one we have currently on the frame rail. I don't think we're going to have any issues. There's still going to be plenty of volume in the system as a whole with those big 12 AN lines, and that good pump and the good heat exchanger, and then this tank. We should have plenty of cooling in there for the system. If we don't, then we'll try something else, but I think it's going to be fine just based on what we've currently seen with the car the way it runs now. So we're just going to get rid of that bigger tank and just go with this one. Now, some other parts we got right here. These are the Gates heat shrink clamps, which are pretty cool. They're called Power Grip, and these things come with different range sizes. So this is the 15/16 to 1 1/16. So they've got all sorts of different sizes because they only shrink so much. So you kind of have to know what you need. In fact, I've got this one open here. So just a pretty cool little clamp here. And you pop this cardboard out of there, then you just slip it over the, your hose, and it will just go on here, and then you heat it up. You can use a little torch, use a little heat gun, and it will shrink down to the size you need and basically hold it on there. It looks really clean compared to, running a worm clamp or something like that. So I think I bought 8 of those. We can kind of see the part number here on those for a 5/8 hose. So should work pretty good. See if we can get it fitted on there. And then there's one other part in the box here, and I actually got this through Amazon, and it is this hose barb fitting. So this is a bulkhead. Let me get it out of the package here. Okay, there we go. Bulkhead hose barb fitting, and we're going to put this on that driver's side fender well. So we can put this on there. We'll paint it black. It's obviously not going to be brass. And then that'll just clean that up too. So we'll do the same thing. The hose will go straight onto there with the heat shrink clamps. So this is kind of the parts layout we're going to use for this project. So pretty cool. Should work pretty good. So that's what I mean by custom setup. So you can find some tanks and stuff online, but maybe not exactly what you need. So there's lots of different options out there, but I kind of like doing the custom thing. We built that other tank that's on the frame rail, which worked really well up until now, going a different route with it. Not because the tank's a problem, but just because we want to clean it up and move things around a little bit, try and solve some of those leaks. So let's get started on this project. Got a lot of work to do here, and we'll get after it. All right, on part 2 of this series, we will start the fabrication. So that video will come out next. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, turn on those notifications so you know next time that video comes out. We've got our plan of action now, so let's put it into place. Be sure to follow us on Instagram as well, And you can follow us on Facebook too. So we will catch you guys next time.